By the time we reached Celeste's restaurant, we were dripping with sweat. Celeste was at his usual place beside the entrance, with his apron bulging on his paunch, his white mustache well to fore. When he saw me, he was sympathetic and hoped I wasn't feeling too badly. I said, "No, but I was extremely hungry." I ate very quickly and had some coffee to finish up. Then I went to my place and took a short nap, as I would drink a glass of wine too many. When I woke up, I smoked a cigarette before getting off my bed. I was a bit late and had to run for the streetcar. The office was stifling and I was kept out at it all the afternoon. So it came as a relief when we closed down and I was strolling slowly along the wares in the coolness. The sky was green and it was pleasant to be out of doors after the stuffy office. However, I went straight home, as I had to put some potatoes on to boil. The hall was dark and when I was starting up the stairs, I almost bumped into old Salamano, who lived on the same floor as I. As usual, he had his dog with him. For 8 years, and the two had been inseparable. Salamano Spaniel is an ugly brute, afflicted with some skin disease mange. I suspect, anyhow, it has lost all its hair and its body is covered with brown scraps. Perhaps through living in one small room, cupped up with his dog, Salamona has come to resemble it. His stubby hair has gone very thin, and he has reddish blotches in his face. And the dog has developed something of its master's queer hunched-up gait. It always sets its muzzle straight far forward and its nose to the ground. But oddly enough, though so much alike, they detest each other. Twice a day, at 11 and 6, the old fellow takes his dog for a walk, and for 8 years that walk has never varied. You can see them in the Rue de Lyon, the dog pulling his master along as hard as he can, till finally the old chap misses a step and nearly falls. Then he beats his dog and calls it names. The dog covers and lags behind, and it's his master's turn to drag him along. Presently, the dog forgets, starts tugging at the leash again, gets another hiding and more abuse. Then they halt on the pavement, the pair of them, and glare at each other, the dog with terror and the man with hatred in his eyes. Every time they are out, this happens. When the dog wants to stop at a lamppost, the old boy won't let him, and drags him on. On the verge, Spaniel leaves behind him a trail of little drops, but if he does it in the room, it means another thing. It's been going on like this for 8 years, and Celeste always says it's a crying shame. Shame. And it can be sure. When I met him in the hall, Salomona was bawling at his dog, calling him a bastard, a lousy mongrel, and so forth. And the dog was whining. I said, "Good evening," but the old fellow took no notice and went on cursing. So I thought I would ask him what the dog had done. Again, he didn't answer, but went on shouting, "You bloody cur," and the rest of it. I couldn't see very clearly, but he seemed to be fixing something on the dog's collar. I raised my voice a little. Without looking round, he mumbled in a sort of suppressed fury, "He is always in the way, blast him." Then he started up the stairs, but the dog tried to resist and flattened itself out on the floor. So he had to hold it up on the leash, step by step. Just then another man, who lives on my floor, came in from the street. The general idea here about is that he's a pimp. But if you ask him what his job is, he says he's a warehouseman. One thing's sure, he isn't popular in our street. Still, he often has a word for me, and drops in sometimes for a short talk in my room, because I listen to him. As a matter of fact, I find what he says quite interesting. So really, I have no reason for freezing him off. His name is Syntes, Raymond Syntes. He is short and thick-set, has a nose like a boxer's, and always dresses very sparsely. He too once said to me, referring to Solomon, that it was a damned shame, and asked me if I wasn't disgusted by the way the old man served his dog. I answered no. We went up the stairs together, Sintas and I, and when I was turning in at my door, he said, "Look here, how about having some grub with me? I have a black pudding and some wine." It struck me that this would save my having to cook my dinner, so I said, "Thanks very much." He too has only one room, and a little kitchen without a window. I saw a pink white plaster angel above his bed, and some photos of sporting champions and naked girls pinned to the opposite wall. The bed hadn't been made in the room was dirty. He began by lighting a perfume lamp, then fumbled in his pocket and produced a rather grimy bandage, which he wrapped around his right hand. I asked him what the trouble was. He told me he would been having a row house with a fellow who would annoy him.